Hey there, researchers. Today, I'm going to talk about a fundamental step in any research process: how to formulate a killer research question. This is crucial because your research question guides everything from your methodology to your analysis. Let's dive in. First, this could come from personal interest, professional practice, or gaps in existing literature. For example, let's say you're interested in nursing burnout. Next, dig into existing studies to understand the current state of knowledge and identify gaps. For instance, you might find that while many studies discuss the prevalence of burnout among nurses, fewer tackle effective interventions. Now, focus on a specific aspect to make your research more manageable. You might narrow it down to interventions to reduce burnout among ICU nurses. Then, decide if your study will be exploratory, descriptive, analytical, or predictive. For our example, we could go with analytical, examining the effectiveness of specific interventions. Next, clearly articulate what you aim to investigate. For instance, you might identify that there's limited evidence on which interventions are most effective in reducing burnout among ICU nurses. Finally, your question should be clear, focused, concise, and answerable. For example, what are the most effective interventions in reducing burnout among ICU nurses? 1. Your question should be easily understood and unambiguous. Instead of asking how to reduce burnout in nurses, ask, what are the most effective interventions for reducing burnout among ICU nurses? 1. Be specific enough to guide your research, but not too narrow. Instead of what interventions reduce burnout, ask, what are the most effective interventions for reducing burnout among ICU nurses? 1. Make sure your question is answerable within your time, resources, and scope. Instead of, what are the global interventions for reducing nurse burnout? Ask, what are the most effective interventions for reducing burnout among ICU nurses in a specific hospital over the past 5 years? 1. Your question should address a significant issue or gap in the literature. Instead of, do nurses feel tired after work? Ask, what are the most effective interventions for reducing burnout among ICU nurses, considering the high stress and critical nature of their work? 1. How do ICU nurses perceive the impact of mindfulness training on their stress levels? 1. What is the prevalence of burnout among ICU nurses in urban hospitals? 1. What factors are associated with higher levels of burnout among ICU nurses? 1. Can the implementation of a comprehensive wellness program predict lower burnout rates among ICU nurses over a 6-month period? Narrow your focus to make your question more precise. Ensure that the outcomes or variables you are investigating can be measured or observed. Make sure that the research question can be answered within your resource constraints. Align your question with current issues or gaps in the field. By following these steps and principles, you can formulate a clear, focused, and impactful research question that will guide your study effectively. Happy researching!